12 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Michael Akintunde with Global News. In the news, police arrest suspects conveying illegal ammunitions in Zamfara. French government to review retirement age. The nation president expresses regret over human rights violations. The police command in Zamfara state has announced the arrest of 2 persons conveying 325 live ammunition along Guzo Wanke Dansadao Road in the state. The command public relations officer Mohammed Shehu said in a statement in Guzo on Tuesday that the suspects were arrested by a police tactical team. He said that the suspects Emmanuel and Nana Ibrahim had with them 325 rounds of live ammunition and 1 AK-47 rifle magazine. Shehu said the arrest was sequel to an intelligence information received about arms being supplied from Benue to a bandit camp in Zamfara state. The suspects were apprehended through stop-and-search operation mounted by the police tactical team. Tigerian rebels have begun handing in their heavy weapons, a key part of an agreement signed more than 2 months ago to end a grueling conflict in northern Ethiopia. The handover in the town of Agulaye, northeast of the regional capital, Makelele, was overseen by a monitoring team comprising members of the 2 sides and a regional body, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. The terms of a peace agreement signed on November 2 include the Samin rebel forces, restoring federal authority in Tigray, and reopening access and communications to the region, which has been cut off since mid-2021. Prince Harry has claimed he boasted in his new book about killing 25 Taliban fighters while on duty in Afghanistan a dangerous lie. The prince has been criticized for discussing killings in Spear with some military figures, saying it was wrong to refer to the dead as chess pieces. But on US TV, Harry accused the press of taking his words out of context and said the spine endangered his family. He also defended his remarks, saying he had wanted to reduce veteran suicide. Spear, who was published on Tuesday, has become the fastest-selling non-fiction book ever in the UK. Some 400,000 copies of the memoir have been bought, despite many experts being leaked in the press ahead of its official release. And the government of France has proposed raising the legal retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2013, a major reform to the pension system. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said that changes were necessary to prevent a major deficit in the system in the future. Reforming pensions was one of President Emmanuel Macron's main promises when he was first elected in 2017. But the details immediately triggered an angry response from the unions, with plans for strikes on 19th of January. Ms. Borne's handling of an explosive reform was cautious as she announced the proposals at a news conference. She was careful to emphasize the gradual, progressive nature of the planned changes, with extra support for those on the lowest pensions. But, as she admitted, the reform will spark fears and questions among the French people. You're listening to Global News on 88.9 FM Accra, transmitting from Ilamokin. After the break, in the nation, President expresses regrets over human rights violations. Stay with us. We'll sure return.
The news on Adaba 88.9 FM.
Glad to know you're still there for news updates and live streaming. Visit our website www.adaba89.fm or download Adaba FM app on Google Play Store. You can be part of us on our social media platforms www.facebook.com/AdabaFM 80.9 on Facebook, at Adaba 89FM on Instagram, and Adaba FM TV on YouTube. You can provide us information via email newsroom@adaba89.fm. Cardinal George Pell, whose conviction on child abuse charges shocked the Catholic Church before being quashed, has died at the age of 81. The former Vatican treasurer is Australia's highest-ranking Catholic cleric and the most senior church figure ever jailed for such offences. He died of heart complications after hip surgery, according to church officials. Cardinal Pell served as Archbishop of both Melbourne and Sydney before becoming one of the Pope's top aides. He was summoned to Rome in 2014 to clean up the Vatican finances and was often described as the church's third-ranked official. But the cleric left his post in 2017, returning to Australia to face trial on child sex abuse charges. A jury in 2018 found he had abused 2 boys while Archbishop of Melbourne in the 1990s. Cardinal Pell, who always maintained his innocence, spent 13 months in prison before the High Court of Australia quashed the verdict in 2020. However, a civil lawsuit launched by the father of the choir boy that prosecutors allege Cardinal Pell abused is still underway. And a court in Iran has sentenced a Belgian aid worker to 40 years in prison and 74 lashes. Olivier van der Castille was convicted of espionage against Iran, collaborating with the U.S. government, smuggling foreign currencies and money laundering. It denied any wrongdoing, and Belgium condemned the charges as fabricated. Iran wants to swap the 41-year-old for diplomats Asadullah Assadi, who Belgium jailed last year for plotting a bomb and exiled opposition groups rally. Last month, Belgium's Constitutional Court suspended a controversial prisoner exchange treaty pending the final ruling on the challenge by the opposition group. Mr. van der Castille worked for 6 years in Iran for the Norwegian Refugee Council and other aid agencies. He left the country last year but returned in February against Belgian government advice in order to close down his apartment in Tehran. During the brief visit, he was arrested by Islamic Revolution Guard Corps operatives and taken to Tehran's notorious Evin prison, where a number of European and U.S. citizens are being detained on spying charges. And the Indonesian President Joko Widodo has expressed regrets for gross human rights violations that occurred in his country's past, including a violent anti-communist purge in the 1960s and the disappearance of student protesters in the late 1990s. More than 500,000 people were killed across Indonesian violence, in a violence that began in the mid-1960s when then General Suharto and the military seized power following a failed communist coup. 1 million or more people were jailed, suspected of being communists, during the bloody episode in Indonesia's history, which ushered in the decades-long rule of dictator Suharto. And Chelsea owner Todd Burley has turned to Hollywood as he hits the red carpet for the 2023 Golden Globes. The 49-year-old American, who also owns the Los Angeles Dodgers, is normally seen watching his teams from the stands, but on Tuesday he was seen walking the same carpet as some of Hollywood's biggest stars. It comes after Burley quit his role as Chelsea's interim sporting director and overseeing their summer spending worth £270 million. Burley had a busy 2022 after completing a £4.25 billion takeover of Chelsea from Roman Abramovich in May. Months later, he also became the owner of the Golden Globes after the Hollywood Foreign Press Association voted to transfer ownership of the award show to his company, Eldridge Industries. The move was done to save the Golden Globes, with Eldridge creating a new for-profit private company to acquire the rights of all the Golden Globes intellectual property. To end global news, a recap of our top stories. The police command in Zamfara state has announced the arrest of 2 persons conveying 325 live ammunition along Guzo Wanke Dansa Dao Road in the state. France's government has proposed raising the legal retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2030 in a major reform to the pension system. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said the changes were necessary to prevent a major deficit in the system in the near future. We told you that Indonesian President Joko Widodo has expressed regret for gross human rights violations that occurred in his country's past, including a violent anti-communist purge in the 1960s and the disappearance of student protesters in the late 1990s. And that's Global News. Editor Patience Ibe. I'm Michael Akin today. Good afternoon.
The world moves as a fast pace and news